Hello again, and welcome back to Illegally Cited. This is Jesse here, and yeah, I am back for another one of these kind of random topic videos that'll just fall under the events and updates kind of area. Just things just keep on happening. Um, just craziness and drama, and who knows. But there's a couple things that I wanted to chat about. I'm not going to go through all the channel stuff as I've done that the last couple of times, but thank you to everybody who has been messaging me on Twitter and the comments, and just like thanks everybody's for their support. Got some new subscribers. I've had some great conversations with some people. Just you know, made some connections through a couple of cool gigs that I've been in that I'm not quite at liberty to talk about just yet. But like I said, there's a lot of frustration happening right now, but there's also a lot of promising things happening right now. Like I know other people are involved in some stuff. I'm involved in some projects and things. So um, tech and game accessibility, it is still pretty exciting. So a few things that I wanted to touch on today is I will just give you guys kind of a quick channel update saying, well, I actually yesterday I found out that for those of you who have been following me recently, yeah, my recent computer purchase, my computer had ended up malfunctioning and kind of slowly dying. So I sent it in to HP earlier this week. They got it on I think Tuesday or Wednesday already. They were supposed to work on it today, or they were supposed to try to repair it today. I got a text notification from them yesterday saying that, no, the repair is delayed until roughly the 15th. So I don't know if that's they're looking at it on the 15th or if they looked at it and went, oh, we have to get parts and we don't have the parts. So looks like I'm going to be using my good old trusty older computer rig for the next couple of weeks, which, okay, I guess. As long as it comes back fixed and fully healthy again, I don't care. At this point, I don't care. I just want it to work, and I want it to work well, and I don't want it to overheat and break again. So that's where we're at with that. Not sure what I'm going to do for streaming this in the next couple of weeks. Of course, my computer is fully capable of it, so we'll see what happens. I might stream something. We'll see. But there you go. And sorry, I do apologize to everybody. Again, the last 2 days have been nuts, and I was checking my Twitter feed, and I was just gonna go check something on YouTube, and went, "Wait a minute, did I upload or did I unlock a video on Wednesday? Because it's Thursday yesterday as I'm recording this." And I looked and went, "Oh crap, the last video I did was my Monday one." So I'm like, "Sorry guys." So yeah, don't miss the video that I just did for Wednesday or Thursday in this case. It's a really cool little 2D hack and slashy Metroidvania thing. It's a really neat game. I picked it up on the Switch on sale and on Steam because it's a really neat little game. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at channel wise. But in the last day or so, day or two, there's been a few things going on. First thing is the Steam Deck. Now, I had, when the pre orders first happened, I wasn't sure how their system worked and I didn't realize what Valve had done. So, what they did is you weren't putting down the full price of a pre order. Basically, what you were doing is you were putting $5 down to reserve your place in line. And so, let's say, depending on what model you buy, you just put your $5 down, choose your model that you want to pre order, and then when the actual pre order happens, then you will be able to say, yes, I want to keep my pre order, or no, I want to cancel it. And then if you want to keep your pre order, of course, you pay the rest of the cost. But I didn't realize they did that right away until a day or two in, And I thought it was just, oh, put your money down, all of it for the model that you want, like a typical pre-order would work. So I think the pre-order came out on like a Friday or something, and I waited like a day or two. So I ended up a little bit further down the line. The estimate says like late Q2 for me, unfortunately. So yeah, if I'm going to get one, it's probably going to be a couple months yet, maybe, or better. But the reason I bring that up is because I know a lot of people have questions about the Steam Deck. Nintendo isn't really doing anything with accessibility other than their Zoom. I'm very, very thankful that the Zoom exists, but nothing for blind users, nothing for text to speech, nothing for a lot of other disabilities or access needs. And so, if they would do it right, Steam had a good, what's the word I'm looking for? They had good potential to do something like that. But again, as we've seen in the last decade or better, that's one area that Steam hasn't really seemed to care about much at all. I mean, granted, their iOS app works reasonably well still. It's a little clunky. You got to use Explore by Touch quite a bit. A combination of flicking and Explore by Touch, but like I do use the Steam mobile app on my phone a fair bit. Needs improvement, but whatever. But as far as their desktop client goes, that definitely needs a lot of work. And I've used Linux before, but it's been many years, and I just really haven't gotten back to it. I just don't have time to learn, play with another platform at this point. But somebody had posted on Twitter, I believe it was Laura Kate Dale. So shout out to you. Thank you for all the answers and checking into things for us yesterday. That was awesome. Because she's like, oh, well, let me, I have a Steam Deck. Ask me some questions. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to say. I was like, yeah, so I know it's a slim chance, but are there any accessibility features in the Steam Deck? And they looked, and it seems like there really is not. I mean, is that unexpected? Sadly, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. Is there no excuse at this point? No, there's no excuse at this point. I can't tell you. I'm sure dozens of people have emailed or tried to contact them. I know I have at least 2, 3 times. But there is some slight hope for low vision, possibly, maybe. I've heard there's a couple different things, so I'm not gonna, don't take this as definitive. But like I said, I heard back from a few different people. And the first thing that they said is like there's like a toggle. It's a very slight zoom, so if you need anything substantial, it's probably not even going to be enough for me. But you can toggle between like a standard and like a little bit of a zoomed in. It's only like a two-step toggle, but you can turn those on and off. They posted a little quick Twitter video video clip on that, so you can kind of see the difference. I retweeted it, so follow me at BGFH79 on Twitter if you want to see that retweet and see for yourself. But there's that. Linux has some magnifier tools, but I don't think they're going to work because I think the Steam OS layer runs on top of it, and it's like a different interface than, like, the way I would compare it to, like, for old school users. I think if I understand it correctly, it seems like the Steam OS is like, remember back in the day when you ran Windows 3.1 or Windows 95, 98, you were running the graphic user interface. You were running Windows still on top of a DOS shell. So if you had, let's say, JAWS or ZoomText for DOS, that would not work in Windows. You had to have the Windows equivalent because, yes, it was still running on DOS, but the layers didn't communicate with each other. And I suspect that maybe that's what's going on. So, like, if you have accessibility features for Linux, they'll work on the desktop mode, but they won't work in the Steam OS mode because it's like a different operating environment, is what I'm gathering. So, I could be understanding that completely wrong, but that's something that maybe eventually I'll have to tinker with, or if I get one, a Steam Deck. And then there was something, I forget the exact wording, but somebody had said they're maybe looking at a Zoom type of feature. I forget but there's a small bit of potential. But again, I really wouldn't hold my breath. I mean, Valve thus far has not seemed to really acknowledge accessibility whatsoever. I mean, the only reason the iOS app works is probably because it uses some standard user interface design that VoiceOver is able to recognize, so it just coincidentally works within iOS, and that's going to get to us to our next topic in a little bit. But I think that's why that works, and what does work in Windows, if you do certain things, is kind of a similar, it's kind of like a coincidental accident at this point. But it's funny because I remember watching this video from, that like, oh, hey, Gabe Newell, the head of Valve, he, was delivering Steam Decks to some of the first orders in the Seattle area. And he's always been really public about like, hey, here's my email address at Valve. And he's like, even in that video recently, he's like, oh, and yeah, like, send me, I'd be happy to hear what you think of it, good and bad. And, when he delivered them to people, and I'm like, you know what? I think I am going to, at some point in the next few days here, I believe I did try to write him once or twice a few years back. But I believe it's just Gabe N. So I believe it's GABEN, Gabe N at valvesoftware.com. And be nice about it, be constructive, be descriptive. But I really think if he claims to do what he says he does, if he reads all these emails, and I won't guarantee that he'll reply to every one of them, because I don't think I've ever gotten a reply so far. But if you are at all interested in making the Steam platform, and when I say platform, I mean the iOS app, the Windows app, you're going to have, now you have the Steam Deck, all these different things. If you have any interest in making Steam more accessible, because there are audio games on there, there are games that blind players can play. Like there's all the Street Fighter games, the Mortal Kombat games are on there. I believe Killer Instinct might be on there. I can't remember. But you have Sequence Storm. I've covered a few actual, like I said, audio games that are on there, which is great. But again, what good is an audio game if you can't navigate the damn interface in order to get there to buy it and install it and launch it? And that's my argument for VR that I've always said is, yeah, it's great if a VR game or app has accessibility, but especially if I'm using a standalone headset like the Oculus Quest, but even the Rift, like the in-headset dashboard is so inaccessible to me that I'm lucky if I can find and get to the app to work with it, even if it's more accessible. So, but what I'm getting at is Gabe N at valvesoftware.com. I believe that's what it is. You can always just do a Google search and verify to double check and make sure I got that right. But email them, like I said, be constructive, be descriptive, and say, hey, I'm a blind gamer, I'm a low vision gamer, whatever you are, and email him. And if we get a lot of people email him, if it's, okay, you get one person emailing him in a vacuum. Like if I went and emailed him, okay, that's one email. But if he gets, several emails to say, hey, listen, we are a valid market. We are a fairly large group of potential gamers that you're not including. Like, hey, I mean, you're making gazillions of dollars, I know already, but, you know, if you want more people to play your games, if you want more people to use your stuff, hey, here's a group you haven't even considered. Let's start looking at accessibility. Let's start actually looking at screen reader support, better magnification features for the Steam Deck. Because here's the thing: if they have a toggle, like if even if it's like a on-off toggle, like you can go small, bigger. They already have, and supposedly it only works in game, not on the dashboard, which really blows. But if they already have that technology, they have. I mean, I know it's again. This is going to tie into our next topic as well. But if they have that toggle ability, you take it two steps further. You make it not just on and off, but give us, even like this, even the Switch, it's got like 5, 6, 8 levels of zoom level. Now, granted, me, I have to crank it up most of the way, but have it a slide, have it like a smooth zoom, like a slider. I can, or give me 8, 10 steps of zoom level, so you can really fine tune it and make it big, and then also just make it work on the dashboard and in game. Just like Windows Magnifier, I'm on my desktop looking at my web browser. I can turn Magnifier on, I can zoom in and out, and some games, increasingly more, thankfully. I've noticed lately I've been using Windows Magnifier in Windows 10 and 11 in games more because some of the more recent games have played nicer with it, and I'm very thankful for that. But I mean, yeah, screen reader support it's tricky, but it's absolutely worth doing. But they're already partially there for low vision. So take it those two steps further. Make that toggle work on the dashboard, and then go further and don't make it a toggle. Make it a several step increment zoom magnification. But I would recommend, hey, if you're watching this, take some time. Again, write up something professional, and I am going to say something that might not be very popular, but I think it's important, and just in general, not just for this email, but it's important. I see a lot of people who write comments or write emails or write, posts or whatever. Blind users, especially, I have a feeling they're probably dictating or something. When you're writing to ask a developer about accessibility, or you're writing, just in general, you're writing anything semi-professional, like a letter, or, you want to really be taken seriously. Even in a lot of the YouTube comments I've gotten, where like if I listen to it, it sounds okay. But if I actually visually look at it and read it, there's no capitalization, there's no punctuation. It's just words. And yeah, that might sound fine for text to speech, but if you want to be taken seriously, you gotta know your grammar a little bit. You gotta, write in real sentences. Put your periods in there, put your commas in there. Please, for the love of God, use capital letters. Because it's just much easier to read. Like if I just see 5 run-on sentences, it's really, if I'm reading it with magnification, even if I'm reading it visually, I have a really tough time processing what in the heck you're trying to say. Because everything just sort of flows into each other, and like it's hard to kind of pick apart, like, oh, this is meant to be, a kind of a phrase by itself. This is what you're trying to convey. And like I said, a lot of sighted, that's the way sighted people read. Like you need those. And even when you're listening, like when you're listening to something, listen to something when there's no punctuation, and listen to something that has commas and periods, like your synthesizer, your screen reader, it'll pause like I am talking and this is the end of my sentence. There's natural pauses, and it just really helps you understand the meaning of things. So like I said, I would encourage people to try, maybe, hey, let's do a little informal campaign here. Let's write to Gabe Newell at Valve. And hey man, you can't go any higher than that. He publicly lets us know his email and wants our honest thoughts and feedback. Let's give him some honest, productive thoughts and feedback and say, hey, why are not you including any accessibility on your Steam Deck or your Steam platform in general? Please improve this. We want to be a part of this. Steam is huge on the PC. And like I said, there's so many points you could make. There are accessible games available, but it's hard to get at them. There could be more accessible games in the future, but again, can we get to them? I mean, I know Halo Infinite is on Steam as well as the Microsoft stuff. So is Forza. So let's try it. Let's email GabeN at valvesoftware.com and see if we hear anything in the ether. But again, like I said, let's do it right. Let's actually, write in proper sentences. Let's use our punctuation. Let's use our capitalization. And again, we don't want to just say your platform sucks, make it accessible, blah, blah, blah. We want to be constructive. We want to be descriptive, informative, like lay it out. This is why, this is how, this is what's out there. This is, like Xbox is doing it, Sony's doing it. You're being left behind. So I am going to do that in the next few days. And I would encourage people watching this to give it a shot as well. What's the worst that'll happen? Nothing. So we're going to transition to one other topic. And this is, it's going to be harder to articulate smoothly everything in this topic. So hopefully I will do the best I can. And like I said, I just want to give my thoughts and try to explain things a little bit for people out there, especially some of the newer gamers. Like, oh, hey, I just discovered, hey, blind people can play games, and how do I get involved and whatever. There's a lot of questions about like, why isn't this game accessible? Why isn't that game accessible? Or even worse, like, there's some text to speech, but yet the game isn't blind accessible. So there's been a few conversations on social media. I'm not going to mention anything, but I just kind of wanted to give people an idea of sort of how things work and what I would love to see going forward. Let me get a quick drink here. So, traditionally there are audio games or text games that are accessible through like your NVDA or VoiceOver or whatever, JAWS, whatever. And then, like I said, there's audio games that are self-voicing. Those are your games that are designed specifically for blind and low vision players. But increasingly over the past few years, there have been games that have been either mainstream games that have been either fully blind accessible or partially blind accessible, or at least have some features that make the game somewhat playable. So there's a huge range of accessibility or lack thereof in mainstream games. And like I said, I'm totally cool with like, yeah, it's cool that there are games for blind and low vision users designed by and for blind and low vision users. And, I want that to continue to happen. But at the same time, as I've said in other videos, how many game companies, how many of these developers have we seen go under because like, hey, I'm going to make a game for the blind. And they find that they just can't do it. They can't sustain themselves over several years financially because it's just not enough people buy them. People want coupon codes. People, and even if they don't, like there's just it's a smaller market, and there's a lot of blind people, but not all blind people hear about a game. I mean, there's games that I don't even hear about until someone messages me or comments and goes, "Hey, did you hear about this game?" I'm like, "No, that one slipped through. I didn't hear about that one." So there's all those issues. So the trend that I would love to see more, and everyone would love to see more, is mainstream games to be playable by everybody. Be able to be played also by blind players. Because then you're playing the same games everybody else is, and we are enjoying the same game. Um, the developer will hopefully be able to hang in there more because they're making money from not just us, but your mainstream sighted, non disabled audience. And that is thankfully starting to happen. But we're not there yet. Like I said, there's very few games that I would consider totally purposefully blind accessible. Like there are games that are accidentally blind accessible. Like I said, for years, blind players have been playing fighting games because just the gameplay style that is inherent to those titles, they're just accessible. Like you hear it's a 2D left and right thing, you listen to where your characters are, you listen to what sound effects each move makes and whatnot. Maybe you hear a little tone for when your super meter is full or when there's an interactable object. You can add those types of things. But like largely, like I said, I remember a totally blind player was teaching me all of the fatalities and moves and stuff for Mortal Kombat 2 way back in like 1990, what, 4? So fighting games have been, inherently just by their design, um, largely playable by the blind. Um, but, in the last few years, there's been a few more games that have added accessibility. I mean, The Last of Us 2, of course, is a wonderful example. And what a lot of people don't realize is that is not using Sony's text to speech. That is not using Sony's screen reader for the PS4 or the PS5. Naughty Dog actually went in and, yes, they used text to speech, but they recorded the audio files for everything that you hear. So every text to speech prompt that you hear, whether it's a tutorial, reading a note that you find, a pickup, reading your inventory, when you arrow through those and you have their text to speech support on, it's literally just triggering these audio files to play. And I'm amazed that it works as smoothly as it does, because if you didn't know any better, you would. You would just think that it was the Sony screen reader working, and it's not. Because at the time, like they probably just there weren't hooks to make the screen reader work in game. So they're like, well, we want to have the same functionality that the dashboard has. Let's fake it, and we'll do what we can so that blind players can still access everything in our game. I mean, they did a phenomenal job. I don't think there was a single thing that didn't speak or give an audio cue or both. Um, but yeah, I mean, the amount of effort that they went into was staggering. Now, of course, they are a huge studio. They've got loads of people, so they can devote more resources to that. How is a 3-person, 1-person team going to do that? People say it's too hard, it's too much work, it's too challenging. There's so many barriers to make a screen reader or make text to speech work. Is it work? Is it a lot of hard work? Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not denying that one iota. But it is absolutely worth doing if you want to get that audience. And, there's a couple developers I can name right off the top of my head, or games that I can name right off the top of my head. Eagle Island. It like the traversal mechanics, the actual gameplay, sadly, especially since it's like procedurally generated levels for the most part, is not totally blind accessible, but like the interface itself. So like if you're a low vision user, that relies on text to speech a lot, like myself, he added text to speech support for his game. And what's his name? Daniel at Sequence Storm. The amount of work that this is a one-man show, guys. The amount of effort that he's put in to make it blind accessible is amazing. It's a mainstream game. It's now free to play on Steam. So again, there's your connection to my last topic. Make Steam accessible so I can actually get to the damn game easier. But it's a free to play game now. I bought it when it was a paid game. But like, it's a rhythm racing game where they have a visual mode. They have they have two different audio modes. One of them is the main one, and it's kind of, a lot of people play that. I'm terrible at it, but it's really cool. But he's made the story mode accessible. He's made the gameplay accessible. He's gone even so far as in the story mode, the thing that really caught me off guard when I first streamed it was he actually added extra visual descriptors, like almost like a narrated descriptive audio for the pictures that were coming up, because he would show little animations or little pictures for the story mode. And it was reading the descriptions of that. I mean, this is one dude. So you can't tell me that it can't be done. I mean, yes, is it a lot of work? Do you have to prioritize it? Yeah, absolutely you do. But even in a small team like that, if that's something you really want to do and you incorporate it early on in development so that you say, hey, I want to make sure this game is playable by the blind. What are some steps that I need to make to do that? It can be done. So yes, you have a giant team like Naughty Dog, but then you have a one-man crew like developing Sequence Storm, and he's doing it too. And there are others that are doing it. So it is there. Now, however, this kind of leads me into a related topic. There's been some talk about, like I said, it's too hard. There's too much work, and people just ignore it, whatever. And having tools versus consultants. And here's the thing. Here's the fact. You need both. You need both. No, you absolutely don't want to just rely on and we're not talking testing tools. We're not talking about people go to a website and they run it through an automated accessibility checker, or they run a PDF or Word document through an accessibility checker to see if it meets accessibility standards. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the literal engines themselves to make games more accessible, to make it easier to do that. So most games are developed in two engines, Unreal or Unity. Those are the two major ones. There's some other ones, and some developers will create their own from time to time. But it's largely Unreal and Unity. And traditionally, the problem is that you have three different layers, basically. You have the operating system layer, which is your Windows, your whatever whatever your Switch runs on, whatever their operating system, whatever they call it, or Sony. You've got your PlayStation, so you have your operating system layer. You have your game engine layer, and then you have your game. And it's really, the problem is that your engine layer and your operating system layer do not natively talk to each other well. Like, yes, your Unreal and Unity run on top of your operating system, but they don't really, you can't, there's features in your operating system that don't get communicated to the Unity or Unreal layer. So of course, your Windows or I'm just going to use Windows because it's easier. So like Windows, of course, it communicates like, oh, here's your graphics stuff that you need, here's your sound, here's your peripheral stuff, so you can use controllers or a keyboard and mouse or whatever you're using. But in all of that, Unity and Unreal, they will account for things like that. It's like, okay, hey, we need graphics information, we need sound, we need controls, we need whatever it is we need. We need processing power, we need memory, we need storage, whatever. We need all these things. But when they designed it, accessibility wasn't really a huge thing back in the day. And so, not Nintendo, but like let's say Microsoft has all kinds of accessibility features in their operating system that people can take advantage of now. You've got Windows Magnifier, you have Narrator, you have sticky keys, you have toggle keys, you have high contrast themes, you have magnification, anything. But Unity doesn't know any better, Unreal doesn't know any better, because these are things that, like I said, they weren't built into the engine. So Windows can't pass that information on to the game engine, traditionally. That is starting to change, sort of, kind of, maybe, hopefully. I know Unreal, or not Unreal, Unity has an accessibility plugin for screen reader text to speech. I know there was some news last year about Unreal. It's like in a beta or some early access sort of form of, and I think Unity is also still there. They're actually trying to do it theoretically, adding native screen reader support. And what that allows people to do is use an operating system's features, and if that operating system happens to have or be able to take advantage of accessibility features, and that's why some games will use screen reader support, like the PC version of Skullgirls is another example. Skullgirls, the way they've made it now is it natively lets the data get passed off to the Windows screen reader, and I can use Narrator, I could use NVDA, and either way it'll pass that information along, because whatever they're doing, they're passing that information on from their game to their engine or whatever. They're passing it along to Windows. Now, again, I'm probably butchering some of the details of this, but on a basic level, you get the idea what's going on. So here's the thing: a lot of the games that are coming out now, that I know of anyway, like they have some text to speech. But here's the problem: every time that a game comes out, whether it's The Last of Us, whether it's Watch Dogs Legion, whether it's Assassin's Creed Valhalla, whether it's Forza Horizon 5, all of these games, because the engines just don't natively support it well, every time a developer even wants to include accessibility, wants to include text to speech in their games, they have to, for whatever they're doing in each game, because every game is different. There are similarities, like Watch Dogs Legion versus Valhalla. They're both open world games, but one is this fantasy medieval or fantasy sort of Viking world, and one's a modern futuristic cityscape. There's different needs and there's whatever, but like they're both probably using, I think they're both using Unreal if I remember correctly. But like there's different things that have to happen for each one of those. Now, I'm guessing for each one of those, though, they have to reinvent the wheel every time. It's like, okay, how are we going to get text to speech working in our inventory screen? How are we going to get it to work in our menus? How are we going to make it read for the map if we even can? How are we going to give you in-world text cues, like kind of like how one of the things I loved about Halo Infinite was you could be running through the world, or Minecraft Dungeons, where you could be running through the world, and as you step over a weapon on the ground, it'll tell you what that weapon is, so you know if you want to grab it or not. In addition to the visual pop up that you see, you actually get to hear it in text to speech. That is awesome. I love that feature. I want more games to do that. But my point is, every time, like every game that these developers make, they have to reinvent the wheel. It's like, okay, how do we get text to speech working in this game? How do we get it to work in this game? Oh, well, this game works a little bit differently. So I can't quite, like, I made the map work on this game, but I didn't make it work here because there's something that's weird about it and it's different than the last one that we did. So they have to kind of start from scratch every time to make some of these accessibility features work, and that's where developers get overwhelmed. So there's been, people that are saying, well, no, we want consultants, we want, you can't solve accessibility with the tool. No, you can't. You can't automate accessibility. No, absolutely not. I've never, no one has, well, some people probably do, but like the people that are saying we need these tools are not saying that you can automate accessibility, because you can't. But you can use tools like if Unreal, if Unity, if whatever game engine, if whatever operating system, if all of these things would work together, developers would have at least a starting point, and they could say, oh, okay, in order for our game to support text-to-speech, for example, we need to use these object labels so that players know what these things are. We know that we need to add labels so that things can be recognized. We know that this is the information that Unity or Unreal is going to pass to Windows. It's going to pass to the screen reader, and if it's gibberish, that's what the screen reader is going to tell us. Like, look at all the images on the internet. When you don't label your graphics and you get graphic 812, that's because that's what somebody left the alt text as. But if they label that button as shopping cart button, well, then you know it's a shopping cart button. Same thing in a game. If the game developer just knows, okay, I just got to label this, and this is the new game button, or this is the Iron Shield button, whatever, in my inventory, then they know that. But they don't have to go and code, they don't have to figure out how to do this from scratch every single time. That's why sometimes in like iOS, there are some games that just happen to work with VoiceOver more because some developers use some of the Apple standards for their design, and VoiceOver just inherently recognizes those. So even if they're unlabeled, VoiceOver might know that there's a button there, and you could write the developer and say, hey, all you got to do is label these buttons. It technically works with VoiceOver, but you just need to label them. Or you can label them yourself with the VoiceOver label command. But you don't have to start from scratch. And if the engines themselves did it and could pass that information on to whatever operating system, here's the other thing. Games are developed now for multiple platforms. And this is why, like, I'm going to use Eagle Island as an example. You have that game on Switch. You have it, I think, on most consoles. But I think the only one that has text-to-speech support is the PC. Why? Because the PC has the hooks for text-to-speech to work. Nintendo doesn't. Nintendo has no such thing. Or Skullgirls. Like, Skullgirls is on platforms, but only the PC version will support screen readers. Now, that was kind of the way they did it. Microsoft Xbox, yes, they have a screen reader, but back when they originally developed It didn't, I don't think, because Skullgirls has been out for even the screen reader support has been out since like what 2014 ish, give or take. So there's so many layers of complexity, but like the more you can have these different tools talk to each other, the more you can have the engine, the operating system, the game, the more that they can have a base to start from. Like, yes, as a developer, you're absolutely going to have to add different things on top of the base to not just make a game technically accessible, but actually playable and understandable to a blind player. Like, yeah, there's still a lot of work you're going to have to do. But you don't have to start from square one. You know, it's like every time I create a Word document, I don't want to have to code the damn word processor. I don't want to have to build my word processor each time I want to write a new document. That would be stupid. That would be ridiculous. But in its current stage, that's kind of where a lot of developers are. I want to create screen reader or text to speech support. Well, I have to create the whole linking system and the whole baseline. I have to basically rebuild that part of the engine every single time. It's not the perfect example, but it gives you an idea. So on top of that, like I said, are you going to be able to automate accessibility? No, you're not. Do we absolutely need disabled game testers, game consultants, game advocates, people with disabilities, hell, in the development, on the development team, the QA team? Sure, absolutely. I love what I do. A lot of other people love what they do. And no one's going to know, nobody's going to know what they need better than that audience themselves. Like, as a low vision user, I know what works for me. I can give some general information about what might work for other low vision users, but my low vision is not the same as somebody else's low visions. I might have good central vision. Somebody might have more good peripheral vision. Somebody might not be able to see colors as well. Things might look blurry to them. Some people may have extreme light sensitivity. So like you have to kind of check with multiple people. Or at least if you are an advocate or a consultant, like even if it's not directly related to your specific thing, like for me, if I'm consulting on low vision accessibility, yes, I'm going to for sure, hopefully, say this is what I need to, okay, this works better for me. I can see well enough to play it now. But I do also keep in mind other low vision aspects, like all those ones I just listed. Oh, what if somebody does have light sensitivity? What if somebody can't see peripherally as well? What if people can't, see in a certain way, whatever. So I want to be as thorough as I can about all of these types of things. But that's the thing is, no, we want Unreal, we want Unity, we want platforms like Nintendo, we want Steam. It all just comes together. We want all of these things to have some basic level of accessibility features and accessibility support so that people don't, like developers don't have to start. That's why developers use engines in the first place. Because in the early days of gaming, every game was designed differently. There was no, like when you were coding for like early consoles, let's say, you coded to that specific console, but like you coded the game itself. Like you didn't have the high level engines that you do now. Like that's why you have things like DirectX. That's why you have unit like DirectX. It's like, okay, rather than have like on a computer, there are gazillions of sound cards. There's tons of different video cards. Not as much as there used to be, but especially in the 90s, God, there were all kinds of sound cards. And because now it's basically like Realtek, and I'm trying to remember the other one, like Intel and Realtek for audio. And like, yeah, you probably get your Sound Blaster stuff here and there, but like, back in the day, there were so many sound cards and video cards. And remember those configure screens in the DOS days where you had to configure your sound and your IRQs and your DMAs, and you had to do all that manually. Now DirectX just says, "Oh, here's the features that you code to, and no matter what your graphics card is, DirectX will interpret that for you and say, okay, here's the information the computer needs to play this game. Okay, there you go." I mean, I'm simplifying it, of course, a bit more, but that's the idea. And if the same thing were to happen for accessibility, to say, oh, you want to use a keyboard and mouse? Oh, you want to use a trackball or a controller or a toggle switch or an adaptive controller, whatever, it just knows these things. So the same thing could apply to screen reader support. It's a way that, if I'm developing a game and I want it to be blind accessible on Xbox and the PlayStation and the PC, let's say, I want some of those engine tools in Unreal and Unity and so forth. Maybe in the future, if that type of thing will happen, instead of having to manually create audio files like The Last of Us did, maybe we can just natively have, oh, okay, well, you want to use the Sony screen reader? You want to use Narrator on Xbox? Because the engine supports it. These are the things that will work together. That's what can happen. So, yeah, you do want to have accessibility tools, but I will absolutely also say you need the human piece of it. You need the human testing, the consulting, like myself and dozens of other people that I know online that are more than willing and able to help with this. Because like I said, people know the main people that will know how to design for a specific disability is the people that have that disability themselves. So I know that was a little bit all over the place, maybe a little bit technical in some areas. But I mean, like I said, there's all this drama the last couple days, and people have just been mentioning like, why isn't this game blind accessible or whatever? Like they should know by now. There's no excuse. And like I said, for big companies, yeah, as other companies are doing it, there should be no excuse. Like there's no excuse. Like Valve should, by this point, as many people that have written into them. You have Microsoft doing it. You have Sony doing it now. Nintendo should know better. I mean, come on. They're the ones, like when the Wii came out, they said, we want to expand gaming to everybody, like grandmas and new gamers and, whatever. Well, a good way to do that is to offer accessibility too. So yeah, companies like that, yeah, they should be held accountable. But there's been all this drama the last couple of days just about this type of thing. And yes, there's a lot of work that does need to go into it. But I think having the industry-wide support of some of these hooks and some of these tools is going to be extremely helpful, because then as a developer, I can look at it and go, oh, Unity supports this. I can put this in my code. And now when I design my menus this way, they'll just work. They'll read with a screen reader, or they'll read with the console text to speech. If I design my inventory system, my skill tree, if I design it this way, it'll work. And it'll be less work on their part, meaning they'll be more likely to want to do it. Because that's the thing, is if these tools are out there, if the engine's natively support it, it's going to make the developers want to do it a little bit more, because they don't have to do as much work in coding it. Like, yes, you'll still absolutely want to get the consultants in there. They're going to be a huge part of it to make sure that it works as intended, because every game is different. You're not just watching a passive movie that's the same every time you watch it. It's a game. That it's interactive. Um, but having these tools is important. Um, and having the consultants is important, just as important. So you need both. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Because, here's the other thing is that one of my most frustrating things, like, it's amazing seeing all these games starting to have text to speech support. I want that in all games. I want that to become a standard. You know, like there's I can't think of hardly any games now that at least don't have some level of subtitles. Like, yeah, some don't, but like the vast majority of them do. Now, could those be better too? Sure. There's a lot of them that don't do it well or that don't do it correctly, but at least they have some level. I would love all games to at least, it's a start. I would like to have games at least have some level of narration, some text to speech, some screen reader support, whatever. And then we can fine tune and make it better from there. But one of my most disappointing things that I have to deal with in the last couple of years is it's wonderful seeing games that have text to speech. Again, I'm going to pick on Ubisoft because I've covered a lot of their games. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Watch Dogs Legion. What was that extreme sports game? Like the biking, skiing game. Riders Republic. All of those games have text to speech in them. And so, naturally a blind person would think, oh, well, they have text to speech. Maybe it's accessible to the blind. All of these are huge open world games, and they have the text to speech, which can help people like myself that need the narration. But to navigate that world, to actually navigate those worlds, I mean, even Far Cry 6, I still had trouble visually navigating some of the world, especially in like Far Cry, because the little waypoint marker was so small and it kind of blended into me. Like you could change the color of it, but I still kind of had trouble. So they need a different type of navigation system instead of that stupid little diamond that so many games use. Like, oh, there's a diamond in it, say, like 733 feet away. It's so easy for that to get lost in the detailed environments so that, like, yes, I can report that there are accessibility features. Yes, I can report that there is text to speech support for some, if not most, of the user interface or the menus. But these games are not what I would consider independently blind accessible, blind playable. And that sucks. Like, I feel for people, I mean, it's frustrating even for myself. Like, there are games that I want to play that I can't, even with my low vision. But then to hear, like, oh, well, there's a game that supports text to speech, yet it's not blind playable. Like, I know they're getting there and I know we have to go in steps, but that's been one of the hardest things to me to say, yes, this has text to speech, but it's not independently blind playable at this point. So I get it. I get the frustration. I get wanting to make companies accountable. I get all of that. But what's making it hard, and like I said, some companies are getting, and some companies are going above and beyond, and they're doing it. They're like I said, Naughty Dog, if they couldn't make the engine do it the way they wanted, they found a way around it. They manually put all these audio files of the prompts in. Should, like, if a company can do that, yes, I would recommend them do that for now. But should a company have to create every single audio file for every single text prompt in the game or menu item in the game? No, they shouldn't have to do that, because if the engines were inherently made accessible like Unreal and Unity themselves, all they would have to do is write their menus and user interface the way they normally would, adhere to a couple of standards, and the damn engine would take care of it for you. They wouldn't have to record 800,000 audio files to make that happen. So then they could devote more time to getting Like, you got the base level done. Now you can actually work on the navigation system, and you can work on getting blind people to come in and test and play, and figuring out these systems that can get elsewhere. So it's less work in one area that will allow greater accessibility in another. I mean, there you go. Like, I know I'm kind of going over and over some stuff, but there's been so much happening on videos and social media and discussions, and I didn't know how I wanted to try to approach this, but I just figured I would start rolling the camera here, or the video, and babble for a while, and hopefully this makes sense to some people. Um, we're all, hey, we're all in this together. We're all advocates. We're all consultants or developers or whatever. Um, God, fighting again with each other. It's just, it's not productive. I mean, we got to have both. We do. We got to have both. Because we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. So, I know this has been another doozy. This has been another long one, but that'll make up for me kind of again missing my Wednesday video and releasing it late on Thursday. But I'm going to release this on Saturday. So, I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you guys found it helpful. I hope you found it useful for people that aren't quite as familiar with like development and really what goes into even designing the simplest little things. Like, I've taken a few programming classes and different design courses back in my day, and even instructional design. Sometimes designing even the simplest little things, yes, it is very hard, but you got to plow through it. I don't use that as an excuse. Like, a lot of things I do are hard, but I still find a way to crank through them. But like I said, I hope this was helpful. I hope it tries to explain things both from, like, again, we want advocates and consultants. We absolutely need them. I hope developers reach out to us more. But having these native tools would make things a heck of a lot more streamlined and easier. Like I said, I don't want to have to write a whole word processor program every time I want to write a Word document. Not going to happen. So, anyway, that's just a few more updates and topics, and hopefully that helps people. Hope you guys found the video helpful. Give it a like if you did. Follow me on Twitter at BGFH79, twitch.tv/illegally-cited, illegally-cited.com, and right here on YouTube, youtube.com/illegally-cited. Feel free to share this video. Like I said, there's a lot of, relevant accessibility stuff here. I hope it can be helpful to both the blind or the disabled advocate and consultant community, as well as developers. Again, and let's reach out to Valve. Let's have a little conversation. Let's send an email to Gabe and see if we get any response. So again, be good about it, but let's keep plugging away and work toward game accessibility here, guys. So until next time, I will chat with everyone again later.